You're listening to Changing Reality. Changing Reality, where we bend reality all across the world. Only on WQHS Radio. So hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Changing Reality. Welcome one, welcome all to all of our returning viewers. As always, it's great to have you back on another episode. And to all of our new viewers, where have you been all this time? Don't you know that this is the place to be? But anyway, for all of you who are new to the show, Changing Reality is essentially a show here on WQHS Radio that features phenomenal people from all walks of life who are in essence changing their own reality. And through this show, we have the opportunity to hang out and interview all kinds of exciting, individuals, from social change makers, entrepreneurs, industry leaders, thought experts, to business owners, artists, musicians, and inspiring individuals from all across the world, and many of whom have spent some time here on the Penn campus as well. And by hearing these inspiring stories on how they were able to change the reality around them through the simple everyday kind of decisions and lessons that they went through, hopefully we'll get inspired and pick up little nuggets of wisdom that we can use in our own lives as well. And with all of that, shorten our learning curves as well, to live the lives that we want and change the reality around us. And I wanted to do the show simply because I felt like there was such a huge power in stories, and that there are so many people out there who do phenomenal things and make waves in the lives of those around them. And by listening to those stories, we get kind of a leg up of how we could do it in our own lives. And from there, the ethos of this show was essentially born. So a little bit about me. My name is Harsha, and I am your host of this show. And essentially, if you're wondering why stories is so important to me, personally, I actually am the CEO and co-founder of a social enterprise called Ascendance that started back in Malaysia, where I'm from, but today collaborates with not just our Malaysian Ministry of Education, but over 26 countries to provide an alternative education platform for any student who wants to change their reality. So we work with students from elementary all the way up to college through various sessions, programs, experiential learning activities, and projects that help them discover their passion, learn about themselves and the world around them, start their own careers while they're still in school, and create meaningful impact in their communities. So we've been fortunate over the last 8 years to work with over 50,000 students across almost 1,000 communities, and have incubated countless number of student-run social enterprises and projects run by kids as young as 8 to 25 years old. And the reason we've been able to do all of that has been stories. It's because of kind individuals who've been willing to take time out of their busy schedules and share what worked, what didn't, the good, the bad in their lives as well. So similarly, like that, I have changed completely because of listening to these stories, and I hope that this show is that same platform for all of you, so that you too can kind of take back the experiences that you need to do things that you love. So if you have any questions, if you have any topics you want to explore, if there's any specific experiences you want to kind of uncover, let us know, and we definitely love to see how we can incorporate it into the show. But that brings us to today's episode and our amazing speaker that we have. We have someone who today has had a long and exciting journey in the world of data and analytics in leadership positions in the US, London, Canada. Our speaker today has had a career that has had multiple notable successes in these fields in the corporate world, growing teams from staff of 5 to 60, generating revenue of over 20 times under his management. And in his early career, he actually led and supported analysis of hundreds of business issues, including capital expenditure, CRM, media, merchandising, pricing, and so much more that you can't even think of in a sense. In addition, he has led business development efforts across high growth and emerging markets and verticals, achieving full sales coverage for over 60 plus focus accounts in his early career as well. More recently, in 2019 to 2020, he led analytics platforms business for Mastercard in Canada, and at any given time was overseeing 15 to 20 active client projects across various retail and business development verticals as well. And at the same time, today, he serves in an exciting role as the VP of Test and Learn at Mastercard as well. So without further ado, let's welcome our phenomenal guest speaker onto our virtual stage.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
So hi, Michael. How are you doing today? Hopefully this is not too early where you're at.
No, it's all good. It's just after 9 a.m. here on the west coast of the U.S.
So I'm a college student, getting up at 9 a.m. In the summer. It's a terrible thought. No, I'm joking, but no, it's really, really a pleasure to have you here, and really exciting as well. So I'm gonna, distract from the interview for a second. But you did so many exciting things while you were in Penn that I wanted to talk about for our viewers as well. But
Let's do
before,
it.
yeah, but before that, let's jump into your career story as well. So tell us a little bit about how you were, before your time at Penn. How were you like? Were you, always sure of exactly what you want to do? Did you have a grand plan from kindergarten of where you were headed, or were you just as lost and confused as the rest of us? Tell us your secret.
Well, it's been a while, so I don't know if I know for sure if I'm in the same boat or was in the same boat of folks these days, individuals kind of coming into Penn or wherever. But yeah, I would say I didn't know what I wanted to do kind of back when I was in, I don't know, middle school, high school, what have you. So it was a journey of trying out a bunch of different things, and I suppose I was fortunate to find my way to Penn. I feel like a lot of alumni say this these days, but with the quality of applicants, I don't know if I probably wouldn't get in 2023 the way that I was able to apply and get in back in 2005.
No, very exciting. And I know, you did a bunch of stuff in high school and later at Penn in athletics as well, which is very exciting. And when you were at Penn, did you know exactly, what were the things you want to try out? I know you did a couple of stuff in, sports business. You organized so many exciting events. You did so much cool projects, like while you were in like managing classes and all, even before you went into the cool, exciting world of the things that you do now. So tell us a little bit about how those undergrad years were like for you in a sense. How was it like, figuring out what you liked and finding ways and opportunities to explore that?
Yeah, I mean, my time at Penn was fantastic. I think I try to give back wherever I can, because of 2005 to 2009 was a moment in time. It was 4 years, but I think being a member of the Penn community, being a Penn alumnus is a lifetime thing. So I've continued to be heavily involved. But yeah, I think sports and sports business has always been a passion of mine. And even going back to before I started at Penn, I remember this was, I think, February of 2005. The Wharton Sports Business Initiative was founded. It's an academic research initiative, I guess, by Scott Rosner and Ken Shropshire. I think Ken's back at Penn now. Scott's up at Columbia, last I saw him. But in any case, they founded this research initiative, and I, as a admitted student but not yet even there, email these professors and be like, "Oh, this is so exciting! I want to get involved. How do I pitch in?" So yeah, that was one of the first big things that I did. Is I got involved with a few other students. I think who were a couple seniors, a couple juniors, and me as an incoming freshman. Started up the Undergraduate Sports Business Club, which I think is still in existence. Admittedly, I'm not as closely involved with the club as a 36-year-old as maybe I was.
It is. Don't worry. I just actually worked on a project with them last year, so totally, you did a good job. Set the roots. Yeah.
That's awesome. So there we go. So it's been around for a while now. So that to me is something to be proud of, and it immediately took into action this thing that we. So I was Wharton ambassadors as well, so giving those info sessions for prospective students. And I know we would say all the time, like, yeah, we have 300 plus clubs, and if there's not one that you like, you can create your own. And I live that. I quite literally helped create a club when I came on board, and to see it have that staying power is pretty exciting.
Oh, very cool. And I know you did, like, I would say some really high profile, like projects while you were there. I know you worked with like literally some of the biggest names in sports today in the Philadelphia area, even.
Yeah, that's right.
Tell us a bit about that.
Happy to talk about that, because it was pretty cool to create this sports business club, and the goal very much, because it was tied to the research initiatives. Okay, we want to share information, educate people in the Penn community about sports and business, the intersection between the two. But we also wanted to help people find careers, find jobs and internships. And I definitely took advantage of some of those opportunities. So between my sophomore and junior year, I did a research project with Rob Giese, who's still involved in a variety of sports business things with Penn and Wharton. And we basically went around and we interviewed executives from all of the major sports leagues to understand, so NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, PGA Tour. This was a project for NASCAR. NASCAR was thinking about reorganizing their media function at the time. So we interviewed executives from each of the other leagues, got a sense of where sports media was headed, where content was headed, and put together a report that NASCAR then acted on. They reorganized their entire media function off the back of something that this professor and undergraduate student had decided was a good idea. So that was kind of cool to see that happen. And then a year later, or I guess a year and a half or so later, let's say, I was part of a field access project. So again, getting some level of academic credit for this, to work with the Philadelphia Union. So they didn't even exist yet. They were just called MLS Philly 2010. This was a project back in fall of 2008. I think they had 3 employees, but they said, you know what? Yeah, let's work with, we're in Philadelphia. Let's work with some Penn and Wharton students and have them help us understand what our season ticket base is going to look like. So we designed and implemented surveys for them. I think there's pictures floating around somewhere of the 4 of us at a construction site in Chester, Pennsylvania, with the CEO of the union and the commissioner, Don Garber, the commissioner of the MLS. So it's kind of funny, like, oh yeah, we're still undergraduate and graduate students that are there for the groundbreaking of a major league soccer team. So to be able to do all those things as an undergraduate was a really phenomenal experience. I genuinely.
That's insane. Like you literally lived like a whole like sports business career while you were an undergrad alone, like truly out of this world in a sense. I know a lot of students right now who, they have no idea what they want to do, but they think, okay, maybe I'll go into consulting, or maybe I'll go into IP. And sometimes, they don't follow their passions when they're picking, things to do in Penn and things to do with their time. And they just try to be very strategic with, okay, I need these specific internships, these specific, experiences. You do something a little different from what from the stuff you were exploring in Penn. But
Yeah,
do you think those experiences were formative and helpful in what you do now, or who you are even as a person?
Yeah, I would say that there was it was a combination of luck and lack of planning that led me to where I ended up, which
the
is
best combination to have, luck and luck.
I think it's openness to new experiences and working hard and trying different thing. So I didn't know I was going to go to Penn or business school until I kind of saw, oh yeah, this looks interesting. They've got the best undergraduate business program in the world, and Philadelphia, that's not too far from Buffalo, New York, where I grew up. It's about a 6-hour drive. So I happened to kind of organize a trip to pass through and walking. I think a lot of people say this, but walking down Locust Walk, just was like, yes, this is where I want to be. So I applied early decision and was fortunate enough to get in. Then when I'm at Penn, I'm not one of those people that comes in and already knows they're going to be an investment banker or consultant or something like that. So I tried a lot of different things. I mean, I was deliberately indecisive to the point where I think most people have a major, or they'll if they've got the concentration system in Wharton, maybe they'll concentrate in 1 or 2 things. I couldn't decide, so I concentrated in 4 things. I did accounting, finance, legal studies, and management. So just deliberately trying all sorts of different items. I did a lot of sports business, but then I found that the opportunities that I had as an undergraduate, so internships and academic projects, were a lot stronger than what they were immediately following. So this was, I think there's been progress here. There's a recognition in the industry, and again, super proud of some of the work that my kind of successors in the USBC and other functions have had. But back in 2008, I mean, there was a global recession at the time as well. But the job opportunities in sports business were not particularly strong. So I was like, well, hey, what else have I really enjoyed? I had done an internship the summer prior in economics consulting, and started to think, okay, data-driven analytics, this sort of thing seems exciting to me. Applied to this small company. There were about 60, 70 people in it at the time. APT, Applied Predictive Technologies. Again, super fortunate that I was able to get a job there. I got an offer, accepted it, and honestly, I've been in that company effectively since then. So for the last 14 years, it's involved, and I imagine we'll probably talk about this in a bit. It's involved a bunch of kind of moves to different geographies. It involved an acquisition. So the company was acquired by Mastercard back in 2015. But I've been in the test and learn space since I was an undergraduate. So I would say very, very fortunate to be able to find something that's turned into a significant passion of mine.
Oh, that's absolutely a brilliant kind of story in a sense. I'm not going to rush in making my major decision now. That's my first takeaway. But kind of building on that in a sense, you started off, I think, as a consultant in, this kind of, you say small, but 60 people is still a lot, general. So, but yeah, so.
I can't get away with calling it a startup because it's bigger than that, but.
It's in that weird in between, so not startup, like actual business. I don't know. I'm not gonna try. Not a specialty. But
if you come up with a good definition, though, I still don't have one, and
we'll brainstorm it later, and then we'll kind of we'll do a whole podcast just on how to name organizations. But you started as a consultant in a way. Tell us a little bit about those early kind of experiences that you had. I think this is something that a lot of students, it's their ideal dream first job out of college in a sense, at least from Penn. How and Penn does, as we chatted before, do a decent job at preparing people for the world. But how was it actually being in a role that first role outside of college officially, other than the internships and so on? And what were the things that caught you by surprise, kind of making that transition into kind of full-time employment?
Yeah, I think honestly, what was surprising to me was I sort of took it for granted at Penn, being on so many teams, either with extracurriculars or project teams for classes. I kind of took it for granted that a bunch of other kind of hard charging undergraduates at other Ivies or other kind of academically strong universities would have that same grounding. And to some extent it was the case, but I really do feel like I had a leg up initially in my first job, having that Penn education and really being grounded in learning by doing, because I felt like, okay, we've got projects, we're working on projects, we've got to figure out what it is that we're trying to do. I need to have these time management skills. I need to understand what's important and what's not. I need to understand how to influence people, how to present, how to communicate in a certain way. And all of these are things that this was not my first time doing it. Once I was out in quote unquote real world, I'd done all those things many times in classes and projects through Penn. So I felt like, okay, this is what was surprising is, yes, you need to work hard, and yes, there are intellectual or other challenges out there, but it's not this kind of shift change from being a student to being a professional when you go to a school that seems to be pretty well up, kind of pretty professionally oriented, like Penn is.
No, absolutely brilliant. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and he's interning over the summer, and one of the things that he was saying is that it was 2 a.m. and he's like, we're still not done with work. We're back in the office. We're working as a team. Things are still going in a sense. You obviously had I would say, relatively quick kind of progression up this whole career ladder thing, if that even exists, if that's a real apt metaphor, I don't know. But what do you think made you able to stand out in kind of the midst of everyone? Because everyone, to an extent, does their best. Everyone works hard in a sense. But what did you do a little bit differently that you think was kind of a help in the right direction, maybe?
Yeah, I would say that I got a reputation, and I volunteered for challenging projects. So, hey, this is the first time we're doing a project in this particular vertical. Nobody in the company knows how to do it. Okay, well, let me try to figure it out. And it was a little bit of a math problem in that, okay, if I'm new, I have the most free time. So if nobody in this company knows anything about this vertical, like I'm going to have an advantage. I can become the expert in my company on this thing because I've got more time to get it dedicated to it. Even if the CEO of our company is on the project too, and he's got a lot more experience, he can probably learn faster than I can. But because I'm spending 10 times as much time on it as he is, I'm going to know more about it, and he's going to come to me for advice on certain things. So that was, I kind of felt like use the kind of the comparative advantage that you have in certain places, be that time related experiences that you have. If you can find those, that is a way to stand out.
Oh, I like that you kind of flipped it on its head. Like, you did a bit of like data analysis on yourself, really, and then was like, my time, their time. Oh, I could be the best. It's very.
Honestly, I don't know if I actually thought that at the time. So some of this is just kind of the like, hindsight is 2020. I'm sure that's what I did. It could also just be I've been in data analytics for the last decade and a half. So I'm applying my current thought process to whatever the heck it was that I did back then.
Well, I say it's cheat code for us naturally a little bit more stupider and less talented people. So appreciate it. We'll have at least 3 people with a notebook writing it.
The university keeps getting more competitive. I do not. This is not a smarts thing at all. I will really suggest that.
Okay, well, they let me in, so they can't be that like that strict in a sense. But you in your role as well, like. In your role as well, I think later you moved to like London as well. First of all, why choose like sure, it's nice. Like we're all fans of Downton Abbey. I'm sure we all wanted to move to London at some point in life. But like why was that a choice you made in your career in a sense? Like like how did you even go about like making that choice in a way? And I mentioned this introduction while you were there. I think you started with a team of 5 people and eventually grew that team in your organization. So how did that whole decision to move come about? And how was it like essentially kind of starting in a new environment, new space, literally in a different part of the world?
Yeah, so it was, there were a lot of factors that went into that. I think one part of it is my partner, now wife, she was successful in getting a job in London as well. So like I kind of turned to my employer, to APT, and said, hey, I want to move to London as well. And again, fortunate that they said yes, they were on board with that. It actually worked out really well in that I asked this question, they said yes, and then I think a week or two later, the woman that had been leading the day-to-day team over there in London said, hey, I want to come back to the US. So it worked out very well. Like I don't think anybody necessarily knew this is what was going to happen, but again, fortunate, able to work out in that respect. And I think there was a piece there where I felt like, again, looking at where is there going to be opportunity. It's a five person team. Generally speaking, like everybody that was over there was still relatively early in their career. So this was me making this move 3 years into my work experience, and yeah, the five of us that were there in the London office, we quickly hired two more kind of individuals that started a week or two after I got there, just straight out of university from some of the leading schools there in the UK, and the founder of the company also was nominally a member of the office, although he was based in Paris at the time and would commute into London for meetings. So it was kind of okay. There's pretty quickly it's 7 of us that are all relatively early in our careers. The founder of the company, and we're all just figuring out how to make things happen. So it was a really, really rich experience and environment for learning, because we had so much latitude to just try different things. We definitely made a lot of mistakes. I would say some of the meetings that I've been in that went the the worst that really went off the rails were in that first year, but also some of the meetings or kind of new business opportunities that I've had that grew the fastest or went the best were in that time, because we really were able to lay the groundwork for something that was a piece of business in the UK, but then it was okay. Now we're looking after Western Europe. Now we're looking after kind of broader continental Europe, and now we're also covering the Middle East, and we're covering Africa. So by the time I made the move back to North America, yeah, we were the second largest office for the company behind the headquarters. And yeah, we were covering effectively a third of the world, kind of Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So it was that was a very, very cool experience, I would say.
And this was all like in a relatively short amount of time, right? So you essentially had
7 years, yeah,
like
over basically 2012 to 2019 is that time period that I'm talking about.
I mean, to go from one place to covering 1/3 of the world, that is pretty insane. What do you think were like, as you started growing and expanding, not just the team, but the clients, the geographies you covered, what do you think was the trickiest part of expansion that you saw, or that you had to counter, or at least the one with the most unexpected problems? Was it a kind of the building the team component? Was it the understanding different ways of business in different parts of the world? What for you was kind of the most exciting or challenging aspect of all that kind of hyper growth?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. Two of the really important ones there that at varying times were quite exciting, or that were challenging, and that's building a team, and that's adjusting to cultural context or business specific context. So from a building a team standpoint, yeah, I think the ways of working in a group of 5 people is very different than 25 people, is different than 75 people, and I think we were very intentional about thinking about how we were building our office culture and how we were providing opportunities to employees. And our CEO had a mindset that I really took to heart, and it was, we want to be a great place to be, but we also want to be a great place to be from. So it was very much, how do we make this as incredible of an experience for all of our employees, but also recognize if we're going out there and we're trying to hire the top talent, there's going to be competition for them. People are going to, it's not always going to be the perfect fit for folks. So if they leave, I want to be supporting them and wishing them well. And I think the way that played out is we had phenomenal retention, because we were really, really, really invested in how do we provide people with opportunity, with meaning for growth. And I mean, if I do the math problem, I'm not going to say that this goes on indefinitely. I think, in all honesty, we're probably seeing some strain to that of, can we have everybody be as entrepreneurial at 150 people as we were at 15, as we were at 65, what have you? Probably not. I think we were going to have to make another adjustment. But we had gone through those cycles probably every 2 years and figured that out. But the other thing is, yeah, people, we had great retention, but we also had a lot of people that bounced back. So folks that left the team, but then came back a year or 2 or 3 later, because like, you know what, this is a pretty great experience. I'm glad I went out and got this advanced degree, or I'm glad I went out and got this other work experience, but I want to keep working with you guys. So that was to me incredibly meaningful, to be able to manage and mentor other kind of really kind of hard charging and driven talent. And then the other point that you asked about, where we put in effort and where it was challenging. I do think continuing to adjust to cultural context, both organizational specific context and the kind of national cultural culture of okay, well, hey, I'm from the US, and now I'm living and working in the UK. I need to adjust to English or British business norms, and then do the same thing in France, in Germany, in Italy, in Russia, in Turkey, and kind of so on and so forth. That required a lot of flexibility, and frankly, even I'm acting like communication norms are all that smooth. I mean, there are plenty of times where I have to figure out how to convey a pretty complicated concept as simply as possible, because the person with whom I'm speaking and we don't have a shared kind of common language. Maybe we're fumbling in a language that neither of us knows that well, or one of us is speaking our native language and the other person is trying to follow along. And that layers on top of the fact that the way decisions are made, the way that hierarchy or authority works, the way that business meetings are supposed to run, like all of that can vary pretty substantially. So I would say, and this is not unique to me, I think this applies to most folks that were in that scenario, but we got a lot better at trying to, or I would say in some cases, being successful in understanding our counterparts, or really seeking to understand folks before we then kind of go on and try to make ourselves understood. So understand our counterpart before we're out there selling things or conveying exactly what it is that we do.
Now, those are two very, I would say, essential like pieces of advice for anyone in that stage. And specifically for me, one of the things that I faced in my organization right now is we went from essentially when we started, we were just 4 people sitting in a room doing things together. Now we have a team of 40 people. We're expanding from one country that we're very familiar with, like Malaysia, to the US, to Indonesia, to India, different spaces that though some are more similar than others in geography, all are very diverse and very different. And I think the question that I have is, like, you mentioned these 2 very important kind of like challenges or just things that come along with kind of that phase of growth. But what I see is that, in my experience, those kind of come in hand in hand. Like, your team grows as you kind of, grow the work, as you expand, as you kind of meet new clients, meet new people. And at times, there can seem to be I don't know, a tension between the two. There's the team building aspect and there's also the client facing aspect, and both have to kind of grow together and simultaneously without overshadowing, either element. And that is, in with the other 101 problems that come from growth from software and tech to, even the nitty gritty, like how do you record and manage and look at data and, reiterate, prioritize in a kind of moment like that where things are happening very fast and everyone is working very hard and the team is growing and so many things are happening. How do you prioritize what are the problems that need to be solved in that moment?
Yeah, I would say that creating as flat of a culture and imbuing psychological safety where possible is so important. If we're all able to have a transparent conversation, and the best idea is the one that carries. It's not about seniority or title or experience or any of those sorts of things. Like that's incredibly important. I think there's also a piece there about investing in training and mentorship and leadership skills for managers. So managers being able to manage managers. I mean, it sounds a little bit silly, but it's so important because that allows for extensibility. If it's top down, if things are being led by kind of a small group of execs, then we're capacity constrained by what those folks can do. But if we're just relentless about, we have transparent conversations, we record this information, we're empowering people to speak up and to learn as fast as they can and to feel energized by that. There's a lot. Like we can go off the rails here into the nuances of working norms and all the various components of how different people have working styles, and we want to be flexible to that. But I think an overarching principle of meeting people where they are and trying to equip leaders at every level of the organization to empower and energize their people, like that was a central tenet of everything that I did. Because I think if there's just a lot of waste in particularly in big companies. So even just getting a little bit better than that at, hey, how do we 80-20 this problem? How do we get 80% of the way there with 20% of the effort? Or how do we, let's intentionally talk about how we structure this particular work stream. We know we need to get it done by X time. Does that mean that some of the more experienced people lean in more? Does that mean, hey, no, definitionally, like junior folks, you're not as experienced here, so we know it's going to take longer. Like, can you work this amount of time? Like, is this realistic? Like, how do we balance here? And I think there also was a piece where we were very mission driven. I think everybody kind of felt like, okay, we are dedicated towards helping organizations make data-driven decisions. So we're empowering these organizations. We have this piece of software. We have this consultative expertise that we genuinely think has the ability to apply the scientific method to business in a lot of ways. And that, it potentially sounds trite, but it really is for me incredibly motivating 15 years on. And I think that there's a self-selection mechanism there too. Like a lot of people that came into the organization also felt like, okay, well, we're combining, and you hire a bunch of people from academically minded institutions, from colleges and universities, and okay, how do we apply some academic concepts to business? Sold. Like, we're all gonna run in the same direction on that one. So I think in some sense that's an easier problem to solve when everybody has some level of background commonality that's working there, or that we can orient around a particular mission or vision. I would say that those challenges probably get much more those challenges become much larger when you're working in a larger organization or one that doesn't kind of only do one thing.
No, I think you articulated that very, very well. I specifically love the scientific method shout out, but from the intentionality to the ability to have that psychology safety to the ability to kind of create that mission driven kind of environment. All of that was so I would say relevant to the conversation about how do you create that culture where people are able to kind of handle that high growth phase and high growth period. But eventually, the organization was acquired by Mastercard. Congratulations to everyone there. You guys must have did something amazing, and like the results, they say echo the work. So amazing. But with any organization, I think being acquired, going through an M&A in any shape or form, there is cultural differences between working in a smaller organization versus a larger organization. You have less control over the team, the way things are done. Just by virtue of that. Of course, there's so many benefits as well of organizations like Mastercard. Honestly, amazing. But at the same time, making that transition, how is that like for you personally to kind of adjust to this new kind of space of how the new organizational culture would be, or how the new structure of things would be? Did you even have to adjust, or were you just like, I'm a natural at this, I'm just gonna run the numbers, I'm gonna do fine? Or was there a period of
I think it's the complete opposite end of that spectrum. It's not inherently, and I would say this a lot. Inherently, there's change. Acquisition or no acquisition, there's change. So I said this a lot. We were, if I think about the first few years of my career in the U.S., it's part of this kind of the single headquarters office, and then 3 years in, I moved to London. I'm there. We grow the team. We quadruple or quintuple the team in 3 years, and in that time period, now we get acquired by Mastercard. We're part of Mastercard. We're doing some level of integration, but we're still operating predominantly separately for another roughly 3 years, let's say. At which point, now we're going to do a more full scale integration. And I think that's the point where some of my teammates are like, "Oh, this is a really big change." I was like, "Well, I mean, we go through big changes every 2 or 3 years. So there just needs to be intentionality here. I think there were some things that went well. There are other things that, honestly, I think as an organization we learned from, and for subsequent acquisitions or integrations, we did slightly differently. But for me, some of the big takeaways were around, hey, you're not going to please everybody, and you are going to have to deliberately break things as part of this. I mean, that's in part of an integration. Like, if nothing changes, then you didn't actually do an integration. So I think just
defies the purpose, but
coming in first principles that, okay, some things are going to change, some things are going to feel better for certain people or worse for other people, or sometimes for that same person, some things are better, some things are worse. Like we acknowledge that, but let's not pretend that's not the case. So again, coming to not complete transparency in conversation, because that doesn't always work, but at least understanding and being able to have real conversations with people on some of these topics. And yeah, it's a continuous learning process. I mean, we were acquired 8 years ago, and I think we are still working through dimensions of how the APT test and learn business fits within Mastercard. And I think we're never going to stop thinking about those questions, because if we do, then we're going to start getting more things wrong. I think it is a constant question as to how this team or how this role fits with these other teams and roles. And we will always be thinking about that. We will always be talking about that and making some mistakes, but also having some learnings that allow us to keep getting better, or at least kind of advancing on those dimensions.
I really love this point of intentionality that that kind of threads through your story. I think it's something that we take for granted in a sense, especially when we work with teams of different dynamic people. I feel that intentionality aspect is so important, because as you said, some things are changes that are beneficial to some, not so beneficial to others, suit some, don't really suit others in a sense. And I think being intentional, having those conversations really helps kind of, I don't even say even the playing field, but creates that transparency to kind of have the culture that is dynamic to solve the issues and find the solutions, versus expecting everything to hopefully work out the way it will and fit in nicely into whatever it is. I think that is not quite a realistic expectation. And what you're painting sounds a lot more, I wouldn't say you kind of turn change and the whole issue of integration into something that's more exciting, I would say, versus than looking at it as a problem and looking at it as an opportunity. Yeah. I think that also kind of fits into this ethos of what you do now, this whole test and learn kind of ethos as well. In a time now where there's so much excitement, there's so many new technologies coming up all the time, really. Tell us a little bit about how your role looks like now, and how do you kind of make sure that your team has the right mindset for the role that you have. Because again, test and learn sounds great in theory, but it also requires a bit more of an entrepreneurial mindset than a lot of people may be familiar with.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think because ultimately what we do is we're working with organizations as they test out new ideas. So you could be some of the examples I give betray how long we've been doing this, but Subway 20 plus years ago, when they were first going to launch the $5 footlong, they tested that idea using our software. Or McDonald's, whatever that was, 7 or 8 years ago, when they introduced the concept of all-day breakfast, they tested that using our software. So any number of concepts where there's this uncertainty as to whether or not it's going to work, there's potentially different versions of the program and figuring out which one works better than others, or all sorts of other ways to optimize going forward. That concept of, quite literally, hey, how do we take the scientific method and apply it to business? How do we try things, understand what works and what doesn't, and then roll out and optimize the things that work? That's been what my team, what my organization has been doing since well before I joined. I think we were founded back in 1999, so we're coming up on 25 years of doing this. And for me, it's I drank the Kool-Aid long ago. Like the concept of data-driven decision making, of thinking about business experimentation and testing and incrementality is just so native to my thought process that there is a little bit of the curse of knowledge for me when I'm working with new clients that maybe don't think that way, or new colleagues that are coming on board and are like, what are these guys? This is like a cult. Like why are they all so into
cult of data? Yeah.
But, so I think it comes back to some of those points around intentionality, around trying to seek to understand counterparts, be those external or internal, because I think that's a key point to onboarding new teammates as well as onboarding a new client or partner.
As we wind down the conversation, I think one thing that I hear kind of in the echo chambers is, I think people say, I don't know where the echo chamber is. One thing that I do hear just by reading stuff online, by talking to people, and especially for people who don't understand how data-driven decision-making kind of works, there's a little bit of fear in that like they feel kind of disconnected from the concept itself at times, in a sense, like when it comes to listening to the data, and they worry that that will take kind of the humane aspect or the human aspect out of the decisions they make. You are someone who is very intentional about the things that you do and have a very kind of human perspective on these kind of things.
Yes.
Where do you think the balance is, and how do you make sure that as we are making the decisions, we are looking at all of the other consequences, all of the other implications that kind of come with, or at least interpreting the data in a way that kind of reflects all of that information?
Absolutely. And I think the key thing here, and I say this all the time, is we work really hard to automate or productize within our software those components that make sense to process algorithmically, or hey, we came up with there's some advanced machine learning algorithm we want to use here, or there's a artificial intelligence model that we're going to make use of. But it's intentional that we're in those mathematical or statistical or generative areas where that saves time or is less likely to result in error. Great, we'll integrate that in the software, while also recognizing, and this answer constantly changes, so we got to keep evaluating it. What are the things that a person can do better? Where do we free up the time of the analyst or the business decision maker to be doing what they do best? I think thinking critically and prescriptively in certain circumstances is still a domain for people. There is not a feeding a massive amount of data into an algorithm. In some cases, that will give you a better result than having a person, based on their experience, make a decision. But there are a number of domains, particularly when the future is not necessarily like the past, where frankly that's just not going to work. Where you can't use a model. There's not a great substitute for that. Or when there's a physical implementation, I think in a lot of the things that we do, we're working with organizations that have a large physical network. They have stores. They have thousands of employees. At the end of the day, if you have this model that tells you what to do, but you haven't deployed it in such a way that the people that need to make the changes are making the changes, then it's not effective. So we are very oriented around using data as an input to allow organizations to make decisions with confidence, and ultimately that decision, implicit in the concept of a decision, that is being made by a person.
I really like that. I think a lot more people should look at it from that point of view versus just the fear and the hype and the everything that's happening out there. So I really appreciate that answer. And as we kind of conclude our episode today, I can't believe we're at the conclusion. This is very sad. But I like just the data alone. I have so many questions, but that's another conversation. But as we kind of wind down and conclude, you have a career that I think is something that's so exciting for a lot of students right now. But you've also had kind of I wouldn't say unconventional path, but you've had a very interesting journey in a sense. Like you didn't always know what you wanted to do. You tried out many things. Even in the organization itself, you kind of, did a couple of things, moved to new geographies, built teams, learned the management skills, did so many other things that, is not just looking at the data and the hard skills and, the things that you need specifically for the role that you have on paper. You learned a lot of things around that. So for people who want to have a career like you, in a sense, what's your kind of concluding advice of what should they be learning, what should they be doing to have all of those additional things to prepare them for that moment?
Yeah, I wish I had this great kind of magic wand of like here's what you do and it'll work out. That's not realistic.
Yeah.
Let me set expectations up front. I would say it's work hard, try to understand your counterparts or add value to whomever it is with whom you're working. Openness to new experiences and continually kind of reevaluating where you're at. I mean, it's all super generic, but there are a variety of these heuristics or mental models that are helpful. And I think that concept of a flywheel and continuing to reevaluate, hey, where am I at? Where do I want to be? Is this working? Is this not working? Again, it's what I do. Test and learn and apply. Like, let's try this and see what works. Like it's it is my dominant mental model now. So I think that for better or worse, that's going to be my concluding advice is test and learn.
Oh, wow. No, that was a little too, picture perfect for word by word, but I like it. I think you summed it up very nicely. And thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate being able to talk to you. You're obviously someone who has a lot of reflection on your journey, and I really appreciate you coming on board and sharing that with me, our audience, and everyone watching.
It was a blast. Thanks for having me.
All right. And with that, our episode today draws to a close to our audience. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Changing.
You're listening to Changing Reality. Changing Reality, where we bend reality all across the world. Only on WQHS Radio.